another Basi Legani, the Basi Legani from Tafshin Mem Hey, 1985. This was from the second cycle, like the Rebbe is going to speak about, that this was the second cycle of learning Basi Legani, and the significance of it being Kiflaim to Shia, that it's something that's better because it's twice. There's also like pretty interesting chidushim or elaborations on chidushim over here in this mimer, as we will point out. Okay, B'siyat Shmaya Shabbos Parshas B'Shalach Yud Al Shvat Tavshin Mem Hey. Again, the beginning I will go mainly quick because it's mainly a review of the previous Rebbe's mimer, unless I see something that like stands out, unique, or an interesting nuance that the Rebbe adds. I've come to my garden, my sister, my bride, and maybe and the one whose yahrzeit it is brings in his mimer that he published for the day of his yahrzeit in the year Tafshin Yud. Mimer the saying of the Medrash Rabbah. On that pasuk in Shir Hashirim, Legani, it says to my garden, it doesn't just say to a garden, Legnuni, to my special place, to my place of union and unity, the place that I was there initially, primarily. The because the Shechina was primarily down here below. I built it and through the untoward or unwanted actions, also in the Stalka Shechina Shvi. So the Shechina rose up, left from the earth to the heavens until the seventh heaven. Now, an interesting point that we see just the difference between this mimer and Tavshin Chafei 20 years before that is that in Tavshin Chafei he said openly that there were sins, and because of the sins, the Shechina went up. Here the Rebbe uses more of a euphemism. He says, Maisim built it Ritzuyim. Anyway, so he continues, afterwards the seven tzaddikim arose. By day, and through their good deeds, they drew down the Shechina from the seventh heaven until Moshe came, who he is the seventh. And all the sevens have special favor by Hashem, like we find the seventh day of the week, the seventh year, etc., etc. By the Lord, he brought it down to the earth. This means as follows: that though Moshe Rabbeinu affected that the Shechina should go down from the first heaven to the earth, still in all, that's not what the Mimer points out. In the Medrash and the Mamorim, it points out how it went from 7 to 6, from 6 to, and then from the first to the earth. That's not the focus, the Rebbe says. Mikol Makim, still in all, line 13, it's called that he brought it down just from the heaven. The point of here is not about the first to not the first. The point is, from the whole idea of being in the Rakiyam, to being in the heavens, to being removed from this earth, that was brought into the earth. And this point the Rebbe elaborated upon in the first Maimer of Basi Legani that he said in Tafshin Aleph, that the main point is our world. What's going on 7th, 6th, 3rd, that doesn't make a difference to us. The main focus is the emphasis and how much it affects and deals with our earth, and that's why to us, the worst thing is the Chetitz Hadas, and the best thing is Moshe Rabbeinu. Everything else is just further levels in either the becoming closer or becoming further, but it's not as much as important and as focused on what goes on down here in our earth. The idea of dir b'tachtonim, in other words. It says, even though it says there were 7 specific tzaddikim that brought it down, but these 7 specific tzaddikim are exemplifying what the avodah of a tzaddik is in general, which is, like it says in the pasuk, tzaddikim yisharetz v'yishkin alad tzaddikim will inherit the earth and they will dwell forever upon it. But Chassidus explains they will make the everlasting one, like the Frierdiker Rebbe says, to dwell upon the earth. Inyan avoid is kol echad misrael, the avoid of every single yid. Why am I talking about every single yid? We just now said we're talking about tzaddikim. So he says, va'am mechon tzaddikim, your entire nation are tzaddikim. To draw down the Shechina. And the Shechina is called Shechina because that's its purpose, to be down here. Why is it called Shechina? Because it rests and is enclosed down here below. It's brought down Tanya. The purpose is to bring it down here in the earth. That's why it says Allah. It says Tzadikim Yirshu Aretz. And upon it, Allah, upon the Aretz, they will make the everlasting one rest, because that's the main point, the bringing it down over here into the earth, as we mentioned before. And the empowerment, where do we have that power to be able to do this? We get it from Moshe Rabbeinu. That through the building of the Mishkan also from the word the idea of coming down here into this world. So by building the Mishkan, he empowered us to be able to bring it down into this world as well, each one of us. So first of all, just like Moshe Rabbeinu brought the Shechina down here into the world, the same thing. There's the Moshe Rabbeinu of every generation. Like the Chazal, we speak about this Pashtus of the Moshe B'chol Dor V'Dor, the expansion of Moshe Rabbeinu in every generation. There is always this idea about the head of the generation, the Nasi Ador, the Rabbeim. They're the ones that are manifesting the Moshe, and they bring down the Shechina down here below. But it's not just limited to the Moshe of every generation. Va'ad l'Moshe sheb'chol echad v'echad Yisrael, top of page Chaf Aleph, until the Moshe of every single Yid. Sha'idei zeh nasa b'chol echad v'echad Yisrael. Through the idea of the Moshe in every single Yid, it becomes the idea that says, Inyan mahavai l'kecha shoel mi'imach kiyim liyira. What does Hashem request of you? Only to fear Him. That fear of Hashem, awe of Hashem, becomes a minor thing in regards to every single Yid. This is the famous the thing that Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, that the Gemara says, the Gemara asks on what it says in Chumash Dvarim, it says, what does Hashem ask from you? Only to fear Him. So the Gemara asks on that, what do you mean? Is awe of Hashem a minor thing? So the Gemara answers in comparison to Moshe, it's a minor thing. So the question is, what does it help me that for Moshe it's a minor thing? For me it's a big deal. And the Torah is talking to every single Yid. So the Alter Rebbe explains, since there's in every single Yid the Moshe within him, so the Gabe, the Moshe Rabbeinu in every single Yid, so it's considered something minor, that he's able to deal with it, he's able to bring himself to the level of Yidam. So because he has a Moshe within him, so in a similar vein, just like Moshe Rabbeinu was the one that brought the Shechina down Ba'aretz, so therefore he says at the end of line 4, therefore the avoid of every single Yid is to make a sanctuary and a tabernacle, a home for the Eibishter, until it will be, I will dwell amongst them. As we know, it says plural, to teach you within each and every one. What particular avoida accomplishes this? So, pratis yoser, more specifically, in avoida zuyu oifen this avoida is in a way of transforming darkness to light. It's a transformation of the darkness of the world to light. That is the idea of the avoida of the Yid in bringing the Shechina down here below. That's also the idea of the beams, the boards of the Mishkan, which costs, like it says, you should make the kroshim for the Mishkan, that you transform from the sheker to falsehood. Which sheker is the same letters like the word keresh, which are these boards of the Mishkan. You're transforming them of the world, and you're putting it in the Mishkan. The oilam hum lashon halam behester. Oilam is from the word concealment and covering. Shazel initial sheker, it's an idea of falsehood, the fact that it covers over ungodliness. Because in truth, everything is elikus. But the fact that the world says that there is no Eibishter and that it seems to indicate an independence, that's false. Avoid is to transform the falsehood to a beam and a board, lias krashim a mishkan, to be the walls of the mishkan lasim by mishkan la to make a mishkan for Hashem. Ois Beis, line 17. The Maimer continues explaining the general avoid to transform the falsehood of the world to be these boards and beams to the Mishkan for the Eibishter. It comes about through Yidden that are called the hosts and army of Hashem. The idea behind this is the perfect and the most perfect type of service is in the way of servitude. When a person is serving Hashem like a servant. Moshe Rabbeinu, for example, that Moshe Rabbeinu shoya Eved Naman. He says he was a faithful servant. Till he also had the advantage of a simple servant. That there is in Tzavri Samach Vav, it says that there's two levels of Eved. One is just an ordinary, simple servant that shows that he's just serving because he's got to do it. He has Kabbalah's oil and he serves. Another level of a servant is that he is called a faithful servant, meaning he is more trusted, he is involved in things, he has more of an appreciation, and each one has an advantage of its own. It's like the difference between a tzaddik and a beini. Moshe Rabbeinu had both advantages of being both an Eved Neman and an Eved Pashut. The idea of a servant as the idea of an army, like he's going to explain, is the idea of self-sacrifice. And in addition to the idea that a servant has the self-sacrifice, yes, in addition to this, Yisrael, him bonim, loving Yidden, our children to our Father in heaven. The service of a son for his father is also in a way of self-sacrifice. Even more so, even more than the self-sacrifice of a servant. Like it's brought down in Zoyar, and it's brought down and explained in Tanya, like a son that does effort for his father, more than his own body, and he gives up his own self, his own body, for meaning he gives up his own life to be able to release them from prison. So you see that the devotion of a son to a father is even greater than the devotion of a servant. It's also a level of self-sacrifice. To make the world into a mishkan for Hashem. Comes about through the Bnei Yisrael that are called Tzivus Havayim, because this avoid is in the way of self-sacrifice. Therefore, it comes about through Tzivus Havayim. The idea of an army is the idea of self-sacrifice. Soldiers are ready to give up their lives. That's therefore to give up their lives for the army, for the country, for the king. And then Maimer continues to explain closely in the Tzivus Havayim the general idea of the army of Hashem. By bringing an analogy and a metaphor from an army of a human king of flesh and blood. That for the sake of the victory in the war, the king opens up also the most precious treasures behind the smith. Of all the treasures that he collected and his parents collected. Precious treasures, till the most precious of the most precious. It's hidden away and concealed from the eyes of anyone that would see. Not only doesn't he use these treasures for anything, that's how precious they are. They won't even use them. He won't say wear this type of precious crown or whatever. He doesn't even reveal them to others. But To be able to be victorious in the war. So the king totally spends and gives away, splurges, some people say squanders the treasures, and gives them to the army, to the soldiers. Although the giving of the treasures to the soldiers is through the officers, so you might think that the main thing is the officers. So you say, no, the officers are only a means for it to reach the soldiers. He says, still in all, the ultimate purpose is that the treasure should reach the soldiers that are actually standing on the front, standing at the war. Why is that so? To be able to be victorious in the war. According to the metaphor, also be understood to what we're comparing it to. Like we say that it came down by chain descent from them. In other words, the reason why a king down here is willing to give from the most precious treasures that's always concealed, he's willing to give it to the soldiers to be able to be victorious in the war, is a result of that being in the spiritual realm. It's not just a mashal that has nothing to do with the nimshal, but the reason why it's down here is the result of the way it's above. For the sake of the victory of the war, the everlasting one of Hashem, of the Yidden, will not be false. In other words, Hashem's nitzachon, that's not false. All the treasures are above is given away, and they are distributed to the soldiers through the officers. Like in a different place, it's explained. What is the treasure of above? The treasure of above, that is the treasure of awe of heaven, that's in every single year that the Chazal say. Concerning the treasure of fear of heaven, that's in the heart of every Yid. Like a treasure is hidden away in the hiddenmost place. So they say, considering this, the Chazal say, everything is in the hands of heaven except for the fear of heaven, because that is something that's given to us. And this treasure is distributed to the soldiers that are standing in the war. They are fighting the war to transform and make this world into a Mishkan and a Mikdash for the Eibishter. So here the Rebbe is going to add that even though this idea applies throughout history, that throughout history our job is to make a Mishkan and Mikdash Yisbarach. So the Rebbe is going to add over here that this is especially now. Line 5, page Chav Gimel. Yes, L'hoisif, we're going to add Shekol Amar Lil, everything that we said before about the treasures being administered for the victory of the war to the soldiers and so on. Ubepratis Yoser is more specifically B'dara Dikus the Mashiach, in the generation of the heels of Mashiach, the generation just before Mashiach comes. So the Rebbe explains why is that so. The idea behind this is in Yedua, it's known the avoid of self-sacrifice in the generation of the heels of Mashiach, is much stronger than even in previous generations. Explains in Torah in many places, what's the meaning when it says that Moshe Rabbeinu was most humble, very humble from all people that's on the face of the earth? So the Alter Rebbe explains the main humility of Moshe was before the generation of the heels of Mashiach. How come? What does he see by them that caused them to have much humility before us? That because of their self-sacrifice, that they're standing powerfully in front of all types of obstacles and blockages and so on. Especially before the scoffers. In other words, in some places the Rebbe actually says this explicitly, that resisting and withstanding the test of those that scoff against Yiddishkeit, those that make fun of Yiddishkeit, is obviously in some ways, but the Rebbe just says greater than even the Mesiras Nefesh of previous generations. It's an amazing thing. You're talking about the Mesiras Nefesh under communist Russia, Crusades, whatever, and still, this is so much more powerful. The Ba'if and Yevish Maligim in such a way that you're not embarrassed from those that are scoffing and making fun, and because of that Mesiras Nefesh. This is also that specifically through the avodah of the generation of the heels of Mashiach, we arrive at the perfection and the completion of making a migdash for Hashem. They shall make for me a migdash, and I shall dwell amongst them. Like it will be in the third Beis HaMikdash. Like the Rambam wrote, mitzvahs asiyas kol Bati HaMikdashes, that the mitzvah of making all the Bati HaMikdashes nilmedes ma'apasuk v'asli migdash v'namar b'mishkan shal Moshe Rabbeinu is derived from the pasuk that says they shall make for me a migdash, that says by the mishkan that Moshe Rabbeinu said. In other words, when Moshe Rabbeinu was told the mitzvah of building a mishkan with the words v'asli migdash, it wasn't just limited to the mishkan that he made. V'asli migdash is a general mitzvah, and it includes the mishkan that Moshe made, it includes the first Beis HaMikdash, it includes the second Beis HaMikdash, and also the third Beis HaMikdash. Mamshich, and the Rambam continues, v'chein binyan also libonis, and so to the future building that will be built. Beis HaMikdash Shlishi, the third Beis HaMikdash, afal pichu kasu b'Yecheskel. Though it's written down in Yecheskel, the dimensions and descriptions and so on, it's not explicit, it's not well explained, it's not enough information to really know the exact dimensions and so on, how it's supposed to be built. And those that built the Beis HaMikdash in the times of the second Beis HaMikdash they built it in ways that had to do with the way how it was built, the first Beis HaMikdash, and also Ein Dvar Malchus b'Yecheskel. In some matters, they did similar to those things that are clear and explicit in Yecheskel. So, in other words, it's all one continuation. The third Beis HaMikdash is the true everlasting home. Because it's a everlasting house. You can't call that the home forever for Hashem is in the Mishkan or the Bayis Rishon, Bayis Sheni, because eventually they were either the Mishkan was hidden away and the Bayis Rishon, the Bati Mikdashes were destroyed. So which is really the everlasting home? The third Beis HaMikdash. This is similar to and used by a Kal V'chomer from the Mikdash that Moshe Rabbeinu made. Why is the Mikdash, the Mishkan, in other words, that Moshe Rabbeinu made, has to do with being an everlasting home? Because it says, the Chol Maisi de Moshe Nitzchim. All the actions of the hands of Moshe are everlasting. The not like the first and second Beis HaMikdash that were destroyed. The Beis HaMikdash, the Mishkan of Moshe, was hidden away. And the same thing, his Aaron, anything that Moshe Rabbeinu put his hands on, that remained. Beis HaMikdash Shlishi Bon, top of page Chavdal, the Bon from Herumeinu Mamashai Demasein over the same no the Dar Dikus the Mashiach. The third Beis HaMikdash will be built speedily in our days through our actions and service, specifically of the generation of the heels of Mashiach. As we said before, that the avodah of the days of the generation of the heels of Mashiach is avodah out of self-sacrifice. It's the avodah of a faithful servant and a faithful son and a simple servant. These are all levels that he speaks over there in Samach Vav about, of advantages and qualities of each one. That's the main idea of the army of Hashem, to have the Mesiras Nefesh. Because of this, that Yidden of our generation are the ones that are, with their Mesiras Nefesh, more so than the Mesiras Nefesh of previous generations, are building the Beis HaMikdash that's going to be everlasting. So therefore, therefore, who is primarily given the treasure that's the most precious of the most precious? It's primarily and specifically to the generations of the heels of Mashiach, more so than it was given to any other generations.